While many have said that they feel as if in this 4+ months into Donald Trump's second term, that the institutions, in fact, are holding. Many have believed that the lower court's decisions and some of the Supreme Court's decisions are holding on to our democracy with both hands. However, there is a new opinion piece up at the New York Times that should be getting more play and more press and have more conversations. And so we are going to dig into it today on the Danielle Moodie Show, while we also highlight the fact that guess what? All of that fraud and waste that this Trump administration has said that they are attacking and going after, it seems as if instead they're opening the door to it. But who will that surprise? Not any of us. Welcome, Damnation. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show. So, Donald Trump and the little minions over at Doge have said that they are just looking for fraud and abuse, right? That all of these programs that millions of Americans rely upon, like SNAP and Medicaid and Medicare, they're being cut into the billions of dollars, all because this administration is a hammer looking for a nail. Even when Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, or as I like to call him, Fisher Price Speaker number two, has been asked point blank about his constituents in Louisiana over the weekend, saying, "You're cutting Medicaid, and that's going to affect over 200,000 of your own constituents." When he was asked that question point blank, oh, he did a dodge better than George W. Bush did with that sneaker. Okay. The fact is that they're not going to answer any of these questions directly because they know that they are lying through their teeth. And so when he was asked about his 200,000 constituents that are going to lose healthcare insurance with this big, beautiful piece of bullshit, AKA Trump's budget bill, he started to go on a tangent about deportations and about fraud and waste, none of which excuse the cuts that are being made that hurt the most vulnerable people in this country. That, and I want to direct your attention to this. So, as Donald Trump flip flops back and forth over one day, he's in a trade war with China. The next day, he's in a trade war with the European allies. The next day, he's in a trade war with penguins. The next day, he's in a trade war with God, just fill in the blank. As the markets get manipulated, which in fact, that is exactly what is happening, and they fluctuate, and you have people inside of the administration and on Capitol Hill that are making bank off of Donald Trump's manipulation, small businesses are actually getting hurt. And not only that, but there is a new business that is now all on the up and up because of Donald Trump's trade war and tariff scheme. Take a look at this. Trade crime is soaring. U.S. firms say as Trump's tariffs incentivize fraud. So before we dive into this New York Times piece, how amazing is that headline? Donald Trump's trade incentivizes fraud. So he got into office on this whole idea that he's going to fight fraud and he's going to be your retribution and he's going to go after all the people that hurt him, not you, but nonetheless, tomato, tomato. The fact is that Donald Trump's up and down trade war is making room for a bunch of companies to come out and say to the most vulnerable small companies in the US that are being killed now over the tariffs, hey, guess what? Psst, come over here. We can help you out. Just give us a small fee and we'll get your goods and services in at a percentage of whatever it is that Donald Trump's tariffs are. That is what's happening. Shipping companies, many of them based in China, have reached out to U.S. firms that import apparel, auto parts, and jewelry, offering solutions that they say can make the tariffs go away. We can avoid high duties from China, which we have already done many in the past, read one email to a U.S. importer. Another one, beat U.S. tariffs, a second read, promising to cap the tariffs, quote, at a flat 10%, it added. You ship worry free. Then the article goes on to state this. The Chinese firms advertising these services describe their methods as valid solutions. For a fee, they find ways to bring products to the United States with much lower tariffs. But experts say these practices are methods of customs fraud. The companies may be dodging tariffs by altering the information about the shipments that is given to the US government to qualify for a lower tariff rate. Or they may physically move the goods to another country that is subject to a lower tariff before shipping them to the United States, a technique known as transshipment. Well, no one tell the Trump administration that because it got trans in front of it, they may ban it for DEI. The fact is that this administration, like I said, is a hammer looking for a nail, and they are a problem creating a problem, selling you a solution, but just creating more and more problems. You see what I'm saying? We weren't having scammers, which is essentially what this is, which we know. We know that there are different kinds of scams that come in all around the country, counterfeit this, counterfeit that. But the fact is that Donald Trump and this trade war has opened up an entirely new market of trade crimes. So while they've been lying to everyone in this country saying that, oh, we're getting rid of fraud and abuse, they're actually incentivizing it and welcoming it with open arms into the United States. Because I want folks to understand that the only companies, right, that are going to be able to sort through all of these emails that are saying to you, hey, we found a solution. Hey, look over here, click this link, come over here, and you can get your business off the ground. The folks that aren't going to be hurt by this are the big major companies, right? The Targets and the Walmarts and the Home Depots and the Lowe's. Who this tariff is actually going to hurt and who now this fraud is going to hurt are going to be small businesses, right? So small businesses who have no choice but to get their products from overseas because it is lower cost and it is lower overhead for them to do so are now being screwed out of their profits that they can't just pass on to the consumer in the way that big box stores do. Right? Like you're talking about stores like a Target and a Walmart that people have made a part of their daily lives and their daily routines. We know that many mom and pop, quote unquote, stores have gone out of business because of these big box stores coming into smaller towns, counties, and states, etc. And so you may make room for the small business, right, in order to balance out how you're spending your money. But when push comes to shove, if now you wanted to get your t-shirt or your pair of jeans from a small business that is now being taxed to hell, and now you're looking at, you were already going to pay a little bit more, but you felt good about it because it was a small business. Now you're paying even more than what is included with the tariff with a big box store. What decision are you going to make? Not to mention that that fee, the tariff, comes on the small business first before they can pass it on to a consumer. So if you're already seeing, right, your consumer base shrink because of how you've had to jack up your prices in order to now assume part of the cost of that tariff before you can pass it down, folks, you see where we're going here. So while Donald Trump and this MAGA regime have wanted to be the champions of the working class and small businesses, etc., they are actually doing both groups the most harm. And yesterday, right, when I went through the other New York Times article that had the map in terms of how Donald Trump's reach has grown over the last decade, it is extraordinary to me that given his policies, right? That are hurting low income people, working class people, middle income people, that they're actually picking up more votes. Like I'm struggling to understand truly what this means, because I also said, and what the New York Times article also highlighted from yesterday's show, was that these people, right, who have been moving, edging over to Donald Trump and the Republican Party over the last 8 years, over the last 3 election cycles, do not have a college degree, and their median household income for four people is $100,000. So is it that these people are easily duped because they just want to believe what it is that this used car salesman is selling them, and they don't have the analytic or critical thinking skills in order to unpack what his policies are? Because here's the thing, and I'm not trying to come for people that don't have a college degree, because one way or the other, it means either you succumb to six figures worth of debt or you didn't. But the fact is that the gold stamp of a college degree, meaning that you're going to make more money moving forward, now we know is just one of the biggest Ponzi schemes that this country has ever seen. Nonetheless, the reality here is that Donald Trump preys on those that are undereducated and preys on those that are working class. Why? Because their attention is not always going to be to the latest headline, because they have many other things that they are doing, right? And so if you are punching a clock, if you are taking care of elderly parents, if you have children that you're also tending to, as well as a boss and your middle level management or low management or what have you don't have the spare time and the luxury and the privilege to be going through all of the news articles and the apps that illustrate the ways in which Donald Trump's policies are actually hurting you. You just believe what is coming out of his mouth, and you assume that he means what he says. That, and also racism, right? Like, I'm not discounting that. I talk about it ad nauseum. But this is what I'm saying about these folks. The fact is, these schemes are costing the US government billions of dollars in tariff revenue annually, executives and officials say. And they are leaving honest companies, small businesses that pay tariffs, deeply frustrated and worried about being left at a financial disadvantage to dishonest competitors. So, again, we know that big box stores, they got the lawyers, right? They got the business acumen to find their way around these tariffs, to make it work for them. They know that people depend on their stores, not only for work, but for their daily needs. That is not the same for small business owners. And so I think what is going to be interesting to look at over the next several years is how many small businesses in America close under this second Trump regime versus his first term versus Biden and Obama's terms. Because I think that, again, Democrats out here desperately panhandling for messaging, I think that may be an economic message to dig into. But what do I know? The next story that I think I should be breaking news, it should be under the ticker of every show, because again, like I said at the top, people believe that the institutions are holding. People believe that the courts, right, one of the co-equal branches of government, are doing their jobs and holding firm to hold on to our democracy. This recent op-ed by Kate Shaw begs to differ. Why is this Supreme Court handing Trump more and more power? She writes. Over the past 4 months, the legal world and the country has been plunged into chaos, and the Supreme Court bears a heavy dose of responsibility. Many of its decisions involving the presidency, including last year's on presidential immunity, have enabled the president to declare himself above the law. The court's latest order both enables the consolidation of additional power in the presidency and risks assimilating a, quote, move fast and break things ethos into the constitutional law. I want to pick up on that last point, the move fast and break things, because that has been the ethos of Silicon Valley, which is where Donald Trump has a little birdie by the name of Elon Musk in his ear, which is you just break everything. And then once you start to provide the solutions for the things that you initially broke, you get to be helmed as a genius. That has been the ethos of Silicon Valley and all of these cis heterotoxic masculine men that have had this idea of failing up. We also know that this idea of going around and breaking things and failing up only works if you happen to be a man and be white and be hetero. That for everybody else, if you are not perfection personified, then you are persona non grata, right? You are not welcome. Donald Trump wants to talk about all of this merit, and I say, show me the receipts. Show me which one of his little kiss asses actually belongs there based on their resume. None of them do. But Donald Trump is using the same model that has been used in Silicon Valley. This just continue to fail up, except when those entrepreneurs, when those people are doing so, when those tech giants are doing so, it is not costing American people their lives or their livelihoods. They're tinkering around in a little corner of the universe that they have taken over, right? With their ideas and ideation and their inventions or innovations, etc. Donald Trump is using this ethos with programs and agencies and institutions that oversee the lives and livelihoods of 330 million Americans. So, who is it and what is it that he is willing to break in order to figure things out? She goes on to write this: no modern president has ever come close to the large scale personnel purges that we have seen under Trump, and for good reason. Many of the officials in question are protected by law from being fired at will by the president. Trump maintains that laws limiting the president's ability to fire high level officials are unconstitutional. In making that argument, he is drawing on a series of recent Supreme Court opinions emphasizing the importance of presidential control over subordinate officials and invalidating removal limitations at agencies like the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau, which just want to remind folks that that Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was created by Senator Elizabeth Warren, has saved the American people billions of dollars, has taken to task companies that within their small print have wanted to take advantage of the American consumer. Donald Trump and Doge slashed that fucking agency so that on top of not paying taxes for the uber rich, on top of tax breaks for these corporations, now they don't even have to be concerned with whether or not their dealings with the consumer are ever going to be taken to court because the very agency that was created to protect us now no longer exists. I go on. But those recent decisions exist alongside another, older precedent, which until now has stood as a bulwark against any president's ability to lay waste to independent agencies. The Supreme Court's 1935 opinion in Humphrey's executor v. United States. In that case, the court concluded that Congress could create expert agencies designed to enjoy a degree of independence from the president and could limit the president's ability to fire at will leaders of such agencies. Now, why is that important? It is important for agencies to have independence, right? It is important that there is consistency and stability with inside of these agencies that don't change every single time that a president comes into office. We have enough, right? In terms of cabinet members, in terms of heads of certain places that turn over every 4 years. But there are agencies that were identified in 1935 that were said to operate outside of the president's whim. Donald Trump has basically eliminated that, and the Supreme Court has given him carte blanche to do so. The court's recent unitary executive cases, with their expansive vision of presidential control, haven't formally overruled Humphrey's executor. In fact, they stated explicitly that they were not revisiting that case, which involved an agency, the Federal Trade Commission, right, which Donald Trump has said over and over again he wants to fire the head of, whose multi-member structure differs from the single-member leadership structure at issue in the court's recent cases. To be sure, the logic of the recent cases casts considerable doubt on Humphrey's executor, but lower courts reviewing challenges to Trump's firings have concluded that those firings are unlawful under precedent, applying Humphrey's executor and leaving the Supreme Court the prerogative of overruling its own decisions. So, folks, this is what is happening. Over the past 4 months, Donald Trump has fired a myriad of people. And several of them, which is at the heart of these cases that are being decided right now by the Supreme Court, have been, right, blocked by the lower courts. But in the most recent decision this fucking week, the Supreme Court decided to object to the lower court's decision, allow the firings to be stayed while they figure things out, essentially handing Donald Trump a win and signaling the strengthening of an executive branch that is under the control of an aspiring dictator. How does that make sense? No one knows. So that's what's happened in the challenges brought by Kathy Harris of the Merit Systems Protection Board and Gwynne Wilcox of the National Labor Relations Board, two agencies that look a lot like the FTC. Ms. Harris and Ms. Wilcox prevailed in their cases before a U.S. District Court and then the full D.C. Circuit Court. But last week, the Supreme Court stayed those lower court rulings, protecting Ms. Harris and Ms. Wilcox, and permitted their firings to stand while the litigation proceeded. She goes on to write this: to be clear, I am not a fan of unitary executive theory or of its proponents' singular fixation on the president's power to fire, a power the Constitution does not expressly give the president, and one that I don't think history supports. Even if you disagree, even if you think that Article 2's grant of executive power to the president includes the power to fire at will any high-level official in the executive branch, the court's disposition of the case sends a profoundly dangerous message to the White House. In the firing, officials like Ms. Harris and Ms. Wilcox, the administration acted in flagrant violation of statutes and in direct defiance of the Supreme Court. Handing the president a win here suggests that the administration did not need to abide by Congress's statutes or the Supreme Court's rulings as it sought to change legal understanding. They have rolled out the red carpet to this administration to continue with their unlawful and willful firings of whoever they believe is a, quote, DEI hire. If you notice, it's 2 women that were fired. One of them, I know for sure, is a Black woman, right? Moving them out of positions that only Congress should have the authority to remove them from, and saying that, oh, well, it's the president's will. Donald Trump, in 4 months, has absolutely restructured and destroyed our government agencies. And for those that continue to say that the courts are holding, are not paying attention as these cases make their moves up to the MAGA stacked Supreme Court. Now, while we're bothering ourselves and being distracted by Qatari fucking luxury palaces in the sky, while we're being distracted by Donald Trump's deportations and all of these things, the court is actually handing him more power, given what he's already done to abuse it. This is what it means to flood the zone and distract us with all sorts of things, whether it be the takeover of the Supreme Court, the lawsuits against Harvard University, the disappearances of professors, right? The detainment of innocent people, right? The open bribery that is happening with the meme coin dinner and the Qatari jet. Like, there is so much that this administration, that this fucking criminal enterprise is doing. And in the meantime, while we're watching this shit happen in real time, this Supreme Court is saying, hey, you know what? Let me take away that scalpel and give you the fucking sledgehammer. You know what? I think the sledgehammer isn't doing a good enough job. Let me give you, right, a bomb and see if that does it. Like, that's what the Supreme Court is doing. And because we have our attention in so many different places and our heads on a swivel, we are missing how Donald Trump is literally consuming more and more power, and that this Supreme Court seemingly sees nothing wrong with that. She goes on to write this: given the range of high stakes legal questions pending before the courts, on questions ranging from the due process rights of migrants to the termination of federal funds to the firing of civil servants, this decision risks emboldening the administration further to act outside our traditional constitutional order. I think that ship has fucking sailed. And it did so during a week when the administration has accelerated its assault on both norms and law, criminally charging a member of Congress, accepting a luxury Qatari jet, and defending the president's lavish investor dinner that would have been unthinkable under the ethics guidelines of previous administrations. In the past 4 months, the lower courts have done more than any other government entities to respond to the chaos emanating from the Trump administration. They have enforced constitutional guarantees, required compliance with statutes, and insisted on the force of the decisions of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, by contrast, has undermined lower courts seeking to protect the rule of law and emboldened an administration eager to trample it. You can see why White House lawyers could feel encouraged to advise Trump of the correctness of a claim he was once mocked for making. Quote, I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president. She concludes with this: the court may believe that it retains the ultimate authority to check presidential lawlessness, even as it signs off on the elimination of many other constraints on presidential power. The danger is that by the time the court tries to exercise that authority, it may be too late. And the fact is, folks, I believe that we have arrived at that point. Donald Trump has no restraints. There are no checks and balances. There are innocent men still sitting at CCOT, even in light of a federal judge's decision that says you must facilitate their return, even if that federal judge is the supreme, right? The supreme judge and court that said that you must do that. Have you seen any planes return? Kilmar Abrego Garcia, still in an El Salvador prison, even though Chris Van Hollen went there, and even though another federal judge said that holding him in El Salvador was unlawful and that his return should be facilitated. Mohammed Khalil, still in a detention center, along with so many others. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers have been fired for no other reason than they refused to pledge their allegiance to Donald Trump, and more so that those agencies could be shuttered and the money funneled to Donald Trump's pockets and those in his inner circle. This is what it means to be ruled by the insatiable rich that destroy anything that was meant to help the American people so that they continue to help themselves to America's buffet. Except At some point, the contents will in fact run out. And then what will they do? And what will the people be forced to do? They say eat the rich for a reason. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do. It is free and help the algorithm fairies by liking, commenting, and sharing this video. And folks, I am just so grateful for you all and for you being here on a regular basis. This week is kind of a choppy week, so I'm doing some pre records, but I will be back live on Thursday. And I look forward to seeing you all then, live and in person. Until then, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane. And in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. Be well.